Good evening and welcome to the school committee meeting of Tuesday, March 8th, 2016. We have our public hearing on the school department budget scheduled for 7 p.m., so we will start that right now. If anyone would like to speak, Tom Stapleton will come around. He has the microphone, so you can just stay where you are. He'll come to you. And we can get started. So I have a sign-in sheet. Mr. Bray, would you like to start?
Need a motion.
What, we do?
To open the public hearing.
Are you sure?
Yes. I move the school committee opens a public hearing for the budget of 2017.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Voted unanimously.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to first congratulate you all on the getting through the budget process. I know there were a lot of constraints this year, and it took a lot of effort to keep the budget modest at 4% increase, and I appreciate all the efforts you put into it with the subcommittee, the finance subcommittee, and working with the town, so thank you for that. I wanted to just speak primarily, though, to an issue that we're having at Walton with space, and I understand that the committee's talked about this of late, and that you acted to approve a capital request for additional space, additional classroom space at Walton. So thank you for taking that step. That's an important step to helping us address the space issues that we're having there, which, if you'll just indulge me for a minute, I'll just want to provide a little background for what's going on at Walton in terms of space. We currently are pretty space constrained. We have one multi-purpose room that's filling a lot of functions. It hosts art class, technology, library, music, and amongst other instructional programs. And that the demands on that space have well outstripped its ability to host them. And it's no small feat on the part of Principal Hammond to schedule the activities coming and going from that classroom. But what's happening is our students are losing important instructional time and time on learning during the turnover of that space from one specialist to another. And really, they're kind of somewhat at an educational disadvantage to other elementary school students in town because of that. So we're here to really appeal for help in fixing the space issue at Walton. In addition to that space, there's also really not enough meeting space at Walton. Mrs. Hammond and staff are constantly shuffling between spaces. The principal's inadvertently booted from her own office multiple times a day so that people can take meetings in there with specialists and counseling and those sorts of activities. And so we really truly are space constrained. This has been somewhat of an ongoing issue that's been exacerbated of late by a bubble class that we have at the school. And then we have the historical fact that we don't have our kindergartners there anymore. We had them in the past. They're now kind of spread around the district, the bulk of them being at Woodville, but as Woodville caps out, they're shuffled over to Greenwood or Dolbear. So wouldn't it be nice to have the Walton community whole and have those kindergartners at the school with us? So going back to the capital request, I understand there's been a lot of discussion with Town Hall about that request, and I appreciate all the efforts by Dr. Smith and her administration as well as the town administration to try to advance that. My understanding is that the recommendation back is that we really need to have a site analysis done before we move into the procurement phase of buying additional classroom space. So I and I think other Walton parents are wholly support the notion of moving ahead with that site analysis as quickly as we can. I know that means bringing that question before town meeting and having that be a part of the town meeting warrant for May. So I'm here to enlist your support in drafting such a warrant and hopefully getting that drafting such an article and getting that on the warrant for May town meeting. And I'd really like to see if, to the extent possible, that process be as streamlined as it can be, because this has been an ongoing issue and it's only getting worse with time. We'd really like to see the analysis get us to a place where we are improving the space conditions at Walton, as soon as September of 2017. So that's a fairly aggressive timeline for these things, but if we can get a site analysis approved at town meeting this year and then move on the recommendations from that analysis during the next capital budget cycle, that would be fantastic. So thank you for hearing me on this.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Okay, next up is Amy Miller.
Thank you. Excuse me for not standing. So I just wanted to, I'm also from the Walton community and wanted to speak to the same issues that Mr. Bray did with the Walton community, that it's just being, the space is just overused and compromised for our children. And so I think the other big thing that we need to look at is making sure that we get our Wakefield students serviced by Wakefield schools, in public schools, instead of losing them to the private sector. And so we do have currently a school on the west side of Wakefield that draws in our west side students. And then also, with the Doyle being an early childhood center, it used to be both, 4-year-olds and then 5-year-olds, where our kindergartners could at least attend kindergarten on the west side. And now they're forced to leave the west side, get across the train tracks, go to 2 different schools, and that is a difficulty and hardship for some of the Walton families, particularly me, in my condition right now. However, that's not something that's hopefully a permanent situation. So, just addressing that, because we are losing kids to other schools, and we want to keep our community intact and our neighborhood schools good and competitive. And thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Hammond?
I think the parents here really showing up here tonight really speak to kind of the strong community that we have at Walton, and really is a gem of a school. I think that the family community, the engagement of the students, and I think we have probably the most dedicated staff I've ever seen at the school. But we really struggle on a daily basis with the space constraints, and I think the students really want to have full learning experience. The parents want that for their children, and the teachers want that. And it's hard when we see that that's compromised by space, not by our intention or our commitment to our students, but by space constraints. And really it boils down to a kind of an issue of equity when we think about what we want for our students, and when we think about teachers will tell me that it impacts what they can do, the quality of what they can do, not because they don't want to. So things that may seem as simple as being able to do a long-term project where you're working on an engineering project or a 3D art project, where when you're at a school where there's a media space or an art space that's designated for that, that project can go on over time. We have to have everything cleaned up within a matter of like a 10-minute turnover sometimes. We can't have these long-term projects or things that it really, teachers looking for a space to work with a special ed student who needs a separate space to take a test, and they're going from room to room, and finding a space in my office or in the teacher's room, and the instructional time that just gets lost in that. And it's just, I think the whole community is really, we understand, the whole district, and we're in full support of thinking about the high school, and we just need something that just gives us a little more room to grow and to learn, to kind of hold us off for the next, chunk of time when we're there, to really make sure that we're doing our very best for our students and in that time that we have there. So I think.
Thank you. Jeff Holmes?
I just wanted to reinforce the message. I'm a Walton parent, second grader, and a kindergartner who's taking the bus to Woodville every day. I just think, for me, the most important point is to encourage you to act quickly. Right? I'm sure there's a long-term solution with the Walton and the Greenville school, Greenwood school. But I think this is enough of a problem right now that I would just encourage you to act very quickly. I think the idea of making this happen for 2017 is very important.
Thank you. Maureen Doyle?
Hello. I'd just like to echo what Andy Bray so eloquently said and support all of these families here and the notion that we need to support and expand the Walton so it fits the needs of all the students and of all the families, and especially my support to get the kindergarten back to Walton so these children do not have to be bused across town over railroad tracks. Well, all of us families have students in various different schools, from the Galvin to the Woodville to the Walton. We're running all over town to pick up students, drop off students, and we're losing that wonderful sense of community that we have at the Walton, which is what makes the Walton so unique and special. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Tracy?
Again, everyone has said, exactly what I've been thinking and feeling lately, and they've all, said it so well. And I'm just in full support of everything that we've heard tonight.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Hi, I have a kindergartner at Woodville right now. I'm a Walton parent. She takes the bus every day to Woodville. We pick her up at the bus every day, and we change bus stop pickups just because of time and trying to get to after-school activities. That 5 or 10 minute period of getting to the first bus stop in the afternoon versus bus stop number 4. It's a juggle that I don't think other districts are having. I have a 4-year-old who will be coming up, and I'm trying to envision what that's going to look like, again, having one at Woodville for kindergarten and one at Walton, and doing the juggle and the shuffle, and also feeling like now my kindergartner has been at Woodville and has this great experience of a brand new building and a beautiful library and an art room and all this stuff, and now she's going to get shifted to a space where it might feel a little bit cramped. And not that she won't adjust, I'm sure she will, but it's just a really different transition, and one more for her to make, which I think is a lot to expect of a 6 or a 7-year-old. So, and I feel like the other thing about having kindergartner at Woodville is I feel like we're on pause. We've been pretty disconnected from Woodville. We're participating in whatever is going on there, but I'm not engaged with the PTO. I'm not totally committed to the school because I feel like we're just in transition. And then I'm waiting for it to get to Walton, to get to know more people and know more parents and know more families that are in our neighborhood. So it just feels a little bit disjointed. It would be great to get kindergarten back in the community.
Thank you. Peggy?
Hi, I'm one of the Walton PTO presidents, and I think everybody pretty much covered it, but thank you so much to all of you for listening to us. And we have Ms. Hammond, who is wonderful, and our teachers are so fantastic. It's amazing what they accomplish with the limited space and supplies and everything that they have that they can access. So we're just really excited that if we were able to expand a little bit what they could do. And I know for a fact we bought our home there because of the school partly, and it's a small community, and we would love to see the rest of our family through kindergarten go up at the Walton. We're super proud to be a part of that community, and we really would do anything to help. The whole school is filled with parents that would rally around to do anything that we needed to help out. So thank you.
Thank you. That is everybody that signed in. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Could you just give your name and your address, please?
Hi, my name's Barbara Lambiaso, and I'm a parent. I've been at the Walton. I have a daughter going into high school, and my son is actually leaving the Walton after 4 years, and I'm going to be very sad, but I think I've watched the school and the population change and grow, and I think that the Walton community has done, and staff and faculty have done admirably to be able to make the most of what they have there. When my daughter went, there was still a library there, and I just really think that it would be terrific to be able to continue to have the space and the place for the community as it's growing, or at least until another opportunity, rises. I think the immediacy of it is pretty clear from what people have said. And one thing about the Walton community is that the whole neighborhood is on board, and I think it is true. That's why people come and live around that place and space. So I just have my full support for the changes.
Thank you. Could you please give your address too for the record?
Oh, sure. Do I have to say that out loud?
Yes.
Okay.
Just here.
Sure,
just
sure.
brief.
Yeah, no worries. 28 Eustis Avenue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Could you give your name and address, please?
Hi, Robert Bradley, 4 Cedar Place. I guess in different forums, I often hear that we need to ensure that there is equity, within the district. I think it would go without question if you've gone to the Walton and gone into the library, which is also the art room and the music room, and then compare that to the other facilities in the district, that it's really not equitable, and that's what we're here to try to address.
Thank you. Yes.
My name is John McDermott at 49 Emerson Street over on the west side, and just going to echo basically what everybody else has said. The Walton School is a very small school with, we all personally believe, the biggest heart in the Wakefield public school systems. Andy did mention that getting it going by September of 2017 would be ideal. It's actually almost critical to get it that quickly. If I believe the incoming class in September of 17 is going to have 3 first-grade classes, therefore our multi-purpose room will now be another first-grade class. So hopefully we can get the analysis done and something in the works for then. That way there we can seamlessly bring all these new Walton students in and keep that pride going.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak for the first time? Yes.
Hi, Angelique DeFeo, 82 Gould Street. I just wanted to say a couple things. I have a student in 2nd grade at Walton, and I have 2 that have moved on to the Galvin. And I just wanted to say something about the special education at Walton and how space is critical for inclusion and testing at the Walton. Kids are taken out, kids on 504 plans and IEPs are taken out and need some extra time to do their testing. Some of these kids are ADHD kids, and if they have to move from one spot to another spot to another spot within 45 minutes to an hour to take their testing, it really affects their education. So I just wanted to reiterate that this is an urgent matter. There's only these 4-5 years, if you include kindergarten, that these little ones are in elementary, and the curriculum is pretty aggressive, so there's not a lot of time for these kids to get in all the education that they can, all their elementary education. Also, having a couple students at the new Galvin, which is so technologically sound, it almost seems like Walton students are a little behind, and I think the space issue affects some of that compared to just other students within the district.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Bray?
Just one more quick comment, and I was remiss in not saying this initially, is that in every conversation that I think we've had about this as parents and with the staff, there's been this broad recognition that we, as a Wakefield community, need a long-term solution to both the Greenwood and the Walton. Those structures are getting older obviously every day. But at some point in our future, we will need to address that. We're not asking that you take that up right now. From speaking personally for me, I believe the high school is our top priority as a town. I'm really glad with the with what's happened and what's progressing with the statement of interest to the state, developing a statement of interest to the state regarding the high school. I think it's the right thing to do. I don't think we mean to try to, in any way, shape, or form, cast this question about Walton wide open and look at the whole structure. We're just talking about what would it take to add space for us to be able to have a better experience for our students and staff. So, thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment? It's up to you. Do you want to?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it seems like a good time. This was on my agenda tonight, and a little bit later, but it seems like a good time while everybody's here. Clearly, everyone here is from Walton, but I was also going to bring this up tonight. I've reached out to the committee to talk about some of the things that you have as parents. We had originally put in as a committee, we had put in for on the capital plan, a modular classroom or more, but at least one modular classroom. That was our area of interest. At the time we were planning capital in November. Since it's that time, we've had a lot of conversations. Rick Stinson, really guided myself and Maria Sorreo to think about a site study to make sure that we really understood the variances on the property, the parking, the mechanical needs, and some of those things, and that it would be prudent to do it. And then that really kind of led our conversation further. And I began talking to our school committee budget subcommittee and my executive team about maybe next steps. I think, where we are now is that, I've asked the committee and would like to ask them tonight that perhaps we take the lead in requesting a warrant article of $50,000 for this town meeting in May, something for us to either consider tonight or to maybe put on the docket for March 22 to vote on. But the warrant article would be for a site analysis, which would be narrow in scope to address short-term space needs. I think I can really reiterate what everyone said here are really all of the issues. I can say as the superintendent of schools, watching instruction with the multi-purpose room is a really, it's difficult to watch because it functions as a library, the technology classroom, the music classroom, the art classroom, the science classroom, and then any time, a teacher would want to do project-based learning or something that would be experiential, they would have to move into that space. It also means that they have to move multiple times a day. So every time you need to transition from library to music, all of the library shelves need to be moved, and it takes some time to do that. And all the music equipment moved in, and then so you are losing instructional time. I think people are quite accurate in saying that. I think it just changes the experience for a school when you can't use your library at all times during the day. It really, in a high-functioning school, students, teachers should be able to go to their media center really at any time to use technology or library. That is not really possible at this time. And to reiterate what people said about special education, we're really missing that small meeting space, whether it's for counseling or testing or assessment or other needs. The small spaces are really missing in the school, or at the very least, we need more than we currently have. Now, my projections on current numbers is that we will not run out of general grade level classroom spaces in the next few years. At this point, although it was a close call, we're not anticipating a second bubble right now. And I think we've been over those numbers a number of times. So that's the good news. But it doesn't solve the multi-purpose room issue that we're currently having. And I think a lot of people are talking about kindergarten. If we are doing a site study, certainly would be worth it to find out what is possible, and if it was possible to build, 3 classrooms, not only could you solve the multi-purpose room issue, but potentially add 2 more classrooms, and maybe you could bring kindergarten back. And I would be careful not to promise that, but it's certainly something absolutely worth exploring, and that would be the optimum setting for our school, is to have K through 4 there. I think I should note that, I don't want the Greenwood to be missed in this conversation, but I don't want you to think that the Greenwood has been forgotten in this conversation. The Greenwood School at this point is not experiencing space difficulties. It is an older building, as the Walton is, as, the high school is, but they do not have space issues there, so they're really not in the same situation that the Walton's in. I would agree with the final comments that it's very important to me as the superintendent of school that we're not doing anything to jeopardize the high school feasibility study, because that is a top priority for new construction or renovation or whatever ends up happening, hopefully with an SOI in the works. But a small scale site study, narrow in scope, to address specifically site issues, I think would be a very good move on our part, and I would recommend it. So, as I said, that was on my agenda to speak about tonight, but while everybody is right here to hear me reiterate what I think we're hearing some of our community members say, I wanted to bring that to the school committee while our audience is still here.
Does anyone from the school committee want to comment while we're still in the public hearing?
Just wanted to add that, this is certainly on our radar. It has been for quite some time. It's not new news to us. Our original hope had actually been to have something in place for September of 16, never mind 17. I mean, but that perhaps didn't become a realistic goal, but it was a goal we had. So it's not it is very seriously taken. I don't know that, as Dr. Smith said, that we can solve both the multipurpose room and the kindergarten issue at the same time. But it sounds like the multipurpose is the larger of the issues at the moment. But we'll see what the study has to say.
Mr. Kenny?
So, first of all, thank you all for coming out and so articulately kind of explaining what is really a unified main concern. I'm glad, Andy, you followed up, because one of the things I was thinking when you were first speaking was, well, we got the Walton, but we also got to look at the Greenwood too. And so you and Dr. Smith and some of my colleagues have addressed that already. I'm just kind of throwing this out. This is the first time I've heard about the site analysis. I think it's the first time it's been brought up for the most part, at least in a public session. I'm wondering what the viability is of looking at not just a short-term plan and not just for the Walton, but looking at a long-term plan, kind of a larger feasibility study, if you will, or a current asset study to see what we can do for both the Greenwood and the Walton, because I think they're both clearly priorities. They're both old buildings. They're both in tough shape, and we have, on one hand, we have space issues. On the other hand, we want to bring more students in, so there's some kind of conflicting objectives there, and we want to make sure that our kindergartners are going to a school in their neighborhood. And so to find a solution that meets all of those goals may or may not be possible, but if it's not, we're going to have a good conversation that gets really into detail about what are your priorities in terms of is it important that it be close, or is it important that your kids go to a state-of-the-art facility? There's all kinds of questions that need to be answered. And I know the school committee took this up, a year and a half, 2 years ago, to do a feasibility study for both the Greenwood and the Walton. I think this gives us an opportunity, hearing from you folks, to begin more of a conversation before we take that step. Time is of the essence for sure. Maybe the short-term analysis is the way to go for now. I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. I would defer to the experts, but it seems to me like if we're going to do short-term planning, we should do some long-term planning as well. Thank you.
Dr. Smith?
So I'd just like to say, I do think those are two separate things, and I think that's a conversation to be had perhaps as well. But I think the short-term space analysis and action is what I'm recommending right now.
So those are two different things.
I think a long-term and a short-term, in my mind, are two very different things.
Sure.
The short-term analysis is really about the current space issues that really need to be addressed with immediacy.
Okay.
Where a longer-term thinking about planning is to me a separate issue. But thank you for bringing that up.
Sure.
Mr. Markham?
Thank you. Let me echo Mr. Kenny's thank you for coming out tonight and for expressing some heartfelt and understandable concerns. This is something with regard to the use of the Walton that has been on the it's been really on the agenda for some time. We're probably in a better than average position to begin to make some concerted efforts. I would wholeheartedly support what the superintendent and the DPW director are recommending, to go forward and to have a constructive site analysis done, put that on the next town meeting, and really begin to make some short-term progress. on the larger issue about the two schools, meaning Greenwood and Walton, I view that as a much larger issue. It isn't about space. It isn't about bricks and mortar. To me, it's a conversation the community needs to have about how do we want to deliver elementary education. That if we are talking about the elephant in the room and going to a large mega school again, that implodes the concept of a neighborhood schools for the last two neighborhoods that have a neighborhood school. So I think before we talk about bricks and mortar, in my opinion, we have to have a community conversation with the Walton, the West Side and Greenwood neighborhoods about what do we want for a delivery system for our community. But in the near term, frankly, is probably going to be several years, because as we all know, that we also have to be understanding and respecting the town only has so many resources. The state is only going to commit to its piece if we get the high school rolling forward and we get some head of steam building up behind that. That we're not looking at something that's just a couple of years away. We're looking at something that's much further away. So a short-term solution to the Walton is actually going to be a solution that would have to be in play for a fair amount of time, I would imagine. But certainly something that we can begin by bringing this type of advocacy and by supporting the superintendent and the DPW director's recommendation, bringing this advocacy to town meeting, and having something that we can actually put our hearts and hands around is certainly very big. I would wholeheartely am a believer in making better use of libraries and media centers, not just with the functionality of the rooms themselves, but the professional staff that we have in support, begin to reduce our reliance in some ways on volunteers to staff those rooms. But there's a lot to play here, and certainly the information that you've all provided us is some reassurance that this has to stay at the top of our thinking, and so thank you for your thoughts tonight.
Mr. Tiro.
Thank you. I'll echo my colleagues' thanks and all that you all have had to say. I think it's right to talk about kind of the forest and the trees that are going on with these conversations. There are a lot of individual bits that speak to larger conversations. And I think that every Walton parent will certainly agree with me in saying that the Walton is at its heart a neighborhood school. And these kinds of conversations, whether they be directly focused onto short-term or long-term, or the involvement of the other buildings that we have, in my opinion, are what's actually going to drive the educational decisions that the school committee is making. Hearing from the parents, hearing from the students, about those spatial concerns are they serve a great process and a great purpose in dissolving that down to what's actually going to be providing the best student-centered education. So I want to applaud all of you for coming before the school committee to make that point heard, because I think it drives to the core of the issue.
Thank you. Great. I just want to thank you all for being here. It's really impactful to see the families that are dealing with this and to have you all here, particularly with the parking outside, the challenge we had tonight. So thank you, and can we have a motion to close?
Yes. Move that the school committee close its public hearing.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Voted unanimously.
Thank you again.
Thank you. You guys can stay if you want.
It's a lot of fun. You might not be able to get out of here.
We have a captive audience now.
Run while you have the chance before it's crowded out there. Game started at 7, it won't be crowded for another. So you're ready to go home. Then it's my crowd. Huh? I thought it was my crowd. I said it was my crowd.
Plaque. I think I got somebody's
Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.
I'm always late, but I have 5 kids, so I'm gonna have someone at the Walton forever.
Thank you.
You're in this.
Thanks.
Thanks, okay.
I want. I think we can do that. Okay, next up is the consent agenda.
Excuse me. Find it. Okay, so we have several motions, related motions. Is it the committee's desire for me to do them all at once or individually?
You have to.
What's the question?
Should I do them all at once or individually? We have several minutes.
I think just do them individually.
Okay,
please.
okay.
It's like I wasn't present for one
Yeah,
of the
so
meetings.
just put them
Okay,
individually.
all right. Move that the school committee approve the minutes from its February 23rd, 2016 school committee meeting as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
23rd?
Were you here? I don't think I was here,
I was here February 23rd.
right? Oh, I thought-
That was the last meeting?
The last
Yep.
meeting,
Yes.
I wasn't here.
Okay.
I wasn't here, you
Me
weren't
neither.
here, and you weren't here.
On the 23rd?
The last
Oh,
meeting.
yeah, I guess. Oh, so
Okay.
you're saying I can't second it?
Maybe you can second, but you can't vote, you have to abstain from the.
I didn't raise
You
my
can
hand.
vote, because it's just,
Okay.
well, whatever.
But
Okay.
Mrs. Town is correct, I was not present.
All right, all those in favor?
Thank you for keeping my calendar.
3 in favor, any abstentions?
3 abstentions.
3 abstentions.
Sure, abstain.
Move that the school committee
I
approve
was
the
in the same
minutes
boat.
Which means minutes. I-
from its February 9, 2016 school committee meeting as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Voted unanimously. So, so what happens with
You
those?
have to approve them at the next meeting when you have a full quorum
Okay,
of people
yeah,
who can
'cause it
vote on
doesn't
them.
'cause
pass,
Ann's not here,
fails.
yeah.
The motion doesn't pass for the minutes from the 23rd. Yeah, so,
Abstentions 3, 4, 7, 30.
so we need those on the agenda next time.
It'll be on the next time, 23rd next time.
All right.
All right, move that the school committee approve the minutes from its January 26th, 2016 school committee meeting as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Voted unanimously.
Next, we move that the school committee accept the minutes from the February 12, 2016 school committee budget subcommittee meeting as presented.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor? Voted unanimously.
And finally, we move that the school committee accept the minutes from the February 3rd, 2016 school committee budget subcommittee meeting as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Voted unanimously. Thank you. Student Advisory Council is not here. Chairman's comments. We are going to need a revote on the SOI, but I will let Chris get into that when we do future agenda items. Next up is superintendent's remarks.
Okay. So this evening, I included in your packet some information about, I entitled it Wakefield Public Schools Striving for Excellence as a Model Inclusionary School System. And basically what that's about is it's an update on our strategy objective number 3, which is our individualized student learning objective. And I'm trying to keep you all up to date on what's happening with each of our strategic objectives throughout the year. So one of the action plans for the strategy this year was that we felt that it was important that the school and district leaders had a really clear vision for where we're headed. And that's actually been a little bit of a struggle to really define what does our philosophy of inclusion look like and what does our vision for individualized student learning look like. And so we've really spent quite a bit of time on this, really since mid-August, just in many deep conversations, so that as we begin to set the course, we have a very clear vision and can really guide the school district. So what I've included in your packet is some information on what that vision for success looks like and how that vision's really taking shape. So really, there's 2 pieces of it. First is just a kind of our vision for what schools with a strong culture of inclusion look like, and some real highlights from that. I think you'll hear me say often that all students should spend most or all of their day in a general education classroom. and in school-wide activities with their grade level peers, receiving core content instruction from a highly qualified teacher. And that's, in some ways, that's what's evolving in education. I think sometimes previously students with disabilities were often in substantially separate settings for parts of the day and sometimes longer periods of the day. And I think what we're really learning and what research shows is that the more time students are spending in the regular education classroom with their grade level peers, exposed to the grade level standards, taught by a highly qualified certified teacher, and then adding those tier 2 and tier 3 supports as needed. We're really focusing on kind of those push-in tiered interventions where more support's coming into the classroom. And then sometimes students do need to go into a separate setting to get some additional support. But the goal is always to return to that inclusive classroom. So that as we begin to define it, that's some of the main premises or tenets that we're thinking about. And that in a culture of strong inclusion means that students are able to demonstrate their growth because their instruction is being tailored to meet their individual learning needs in every classroom, in every setting. That students are receiving accommodations or modifications as are needed. But most importantly, that they're connected, active, respected members of the school community, all students, and all students develop a strong sense of self-efficacy, and they're accepted and valued for their individual differences as a vital member of a rich and diverse school community. So those are kind of some of the highlights of what a culture of a strong inclusionary practice looks like. A key piece of that is that individualized student learning is taking place in every classroom. So the other side of this document really just presents our vision for what that looks like. And it begins with all of us adopting a growth mindset where that we really translates to the students as well, where we hold all students to high expectations and then provide all children with the supports that they need and allow for different paths and time to get there. We also believe that all students benefit from multimodal instruction and that they're actively engaged in learning activities and that they're allowed to demonstrate their understanding in a variety of ways. Basically what that is, in a nutshell, is universal design for learning, that premise. That students have really personalized opportunity to make choices that reflect their individual interests and their abilities, that students use technology in a way that supports their learning styles and needs, and that teachers are frequently assessing students in little bites, if you will, or ongoing formative ways so that they can monitor students' progress. And this is a really key point. To continue to challenge each student to meet his or her own next challenge or next level of complexity, and that's not something that's predetermined, but is always being determined in real time. And some of you remember back to some conversations around heterogeneity in classrooms and what that looks like, and that's essentially what can be and should be done in all classrooms is individualizing instruction enough that every child, regardless of where they are in meeting standards, is challenged to their next level of complexity. That means the student that's already there, so what is their next level of challenge for that student who's really maybe has some real gifts or abilities, and students who are at grade level and students who are struggling and maybe not at grade level yet. So that's really the essence of individualized instruction. It talks a little bit about flexible grouping. It talks about the way the teacher keeps evidence as students are progressing towards their goals. And then finally, really creating environments where all students cultivate friendships and positive relationships that foster their emotional development and growth. So that really is kind of our articulated vision as we move forward as a leadership team in the Wakefield Public Schools. That was a significant action step for us to make sure we were all together with that shared understanding. So I'd like to just want to share that with you tonight and ask you if you have any questions or comments on that plan for strategic action number 3.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Mr. Halliday.
I'm just curious, how are you communicating this out?
So just recently, so the teachers are all part of a 5-part series. in professional development, in teaching all students. Is the name of the 5-part series. One strand is teaching with students with disabilities, and the other strand is teaching English language learners. And as we really kind of came to this articulation of the vision, I went to to one session to speak, and my assistant superintendent, Mr. Lyons, went to the other session to speak, and we basically, talked to all of the teachers in the district, really kind of articulating this vision and how this vision is coming alive, and kind of that direction, and how we're steering the district in that direction, and it's really a part of that professional development and professional learning that we're all engaging in right now.
Thank you.
Ms. Liakos?
Great, thank you. Thank you, Kim. This was really interesting. I'm going to characterize it and sort of paint a picture and tell me if this is a fair picture. So what you've given us is an ideal, a set of ideals, right? So the picture that I have in my mind is a classroom of 22 children. So you have one teacher. Say you have a child with moderate special needs, and then you have another child with severe special needs, a severe learning disability. That teacher has limited time to cover, a standardized curriculum every day. So how are we doing as a system? How far are we in meeting this ideal in classrooms like that every day
Right
in
now,
the system,
today.
right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that that's exactly right. So this is our vision. This is where as it says, we're striving for excellence and to really become a model inclusionary school system. And in the classroom that you just described, if you have a student with intensive special needs in the classroom, there's likely going to be some supports that are there with them. It wouldn't be just the general education classroom teacher alone. Dependent upon what that moderate special needs student needs would depend on whether or not there were additional supports or not, or whether that was something that the general education teacher could attend to. So, but where we are right now is in every school, we're really assessing exactly where we are and what are those next steps we need to take to get to this vision. I guess, without going school by school, class by class, in a very detailed way. But I think generally speaking, I would just say we're on our way. I think we're excited about the progress we're making. That progress includes both my in the budget process and asking for additional resources that we need. It includes the professional development program that we've put together. That 5-part series of professional learning is really critical for all of our teachers. It has to do with school and district leaders really articulating this vision again and again to help us get there. But I would just say we're on our way, and we have, in every school, we have steps that we will continue to need to take. But I think we're a district on our way.
Great. I was going to ask you about, the how is this articulated in our budget proposal, because I think bringing it back to that is important. So you addressed that. And I think we heard an example from a Walton parent tonight about the challenge of meeting this vision in some of the classrooms in that school, right? So there's
Space resources
Spaces,
definitely help,
as a
without a
hindrance
doubt.
in some cases.
Right.
So that's all really helpful. So thank you. I think you've answered all my questions.
Great. Anyone else have questions?
Thank you. Next in your packet, I've included the Park and MCAS assessment schedule for the coming months. The windows will be opening fairly soon for the assessments to take place. I think we're in a good place and we're ready to go. Mr. Lyons has been organizing and preparing this. And can answer some questions. I think one question that's come to me a number of times is, how much, it looks like a lot to look at the whole calendar. You're looking at many grades together, but in a snapshot, I can tell you what each grade level, how each grade level will be engaging in the Park, both ELA and math tests in the coming months. In grade 3 for ELA, the grade 3 students will take 3 unit tests. The first is 90 minutes, the second is 75 minutes, and the third is 90 minutes. In ELA grades 4 and 5, they take 3 unit assessments of 90 minutes each. In grades 6 through 8, they take 3 unit assessments. The first is 110 minutes, the second is 110 minutes, and the third is 90 minutes. And then at a different time, the students will take their math assessments. Grades 3 through 5 takes 4 unit tests at 60 minutes each. And then grades 6 through 8 take 3 unit tests at 80 minutes each. One of the ways that Park's a little bit different than the MCAS test is that they are limited time as opposed to kind of a test that sort of starts and kids just take as long as they need all day long. I think it's one thing that's really helped a lot about going to the Park is having, kind of time limits on the tests, being able to kind of move through them. And then the MCAS schedule for Wakefield Memorial High School is there. These time and testing windows haven't changed much in a number of years. The ELA testing window opens March 22 and closes on March 24. And then math is May 17 and 18th, and science is June 1 and 2. So if anyone has any questions, they can direct those questions to Mr. Lyons, who's doing all things Park and MCAS preparation. No? Okay.
Just these dates are not exactly in our control, are they? These are determined by the state?
The MCAS dates at the high school are set by the state, but the Park test, they give you this big window, and you can organize within. And that's really what Mr. Lyons has helped do, is to organize the Wakefield testing so that we don't have everyone testing at the same time. Just trying to have the flow of our schools be able to continue on. So just kind of organizing schools. So we really picked the dates and times and ways that worked best for teachers and students in the schools within the window provided by the state.
So it sounds like kind of like an advantage of the Park testing over the MCAS to me, in a way.
Any thoughts on that, Mr. Lyons?
So I think it's a bit of a, it can be a plus. I also think that the use of technology has made it more efficient. And with the new testing window this year, which is different than last, I think it's more efficient as well. So I think it will be less disruptive this year than it has been in the past. So I do think it will be an improvement.
And at the high school, are you still doing like the other grades come in late type of schedule?
Yes.
So going back to the discussion of students with disabilities related to this, do some students with disabilities have a waiver from the time constraints for the test?
Yes, they do.
They do.
They
Okay.
do.
Yeah.
Students will be given up to the length of the school day to
Okay.
take the assessment if the need be.
Right.
I think what we try to do is to just make sure that we're supporting students well and making sure that they're working through the assessment productively. And so yes, the short answer is yes.
Okay, thanks. And then related question was, could you remind us how many, what percentage of the students took? Did 100% of our students take the Park on the computer last year?
Yes. Well, 100% of our students didn't take the test, but we had a very, very high percentage take the test. But all of our kids used the computer-based test, yes.
Who took the Park?
Yeah.
Okay, and our hope is that's going to continue and that our technological infrastructure is ready for, again, that we've learned from last year. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, I included in your packet just an email to kind of give you the setting of something I've been telling you a little bit about, which is that the Wakefield Public Schools has really been taking the lead in educator evaluation. And on Monday, yesterday, I was invited to meet with the Commissioner of Education around what Wakefield is doing in educator evaluation. Dr. Mitchell Chester has been working with this working group of superintendents, maybe like 10 or 15 superintendents that he's been working with since the beginning of the school year on some of the difficulties challenges that they've faced around the newest regulations about using student assessment data to assess educator impact on student growth. And So the word started to get out. You need to find out what Wakefield is doing. Like they're doing some really, really special things there. And so I'm going to brag about that for a minute. Kind of backing up right from the time when the new educator evaluation system was employed in Massachusetts, the new regulations came out in the new system. We had started a district-wide committee of teachers and administrators that have worked together as kind of a steering committee for the process from the onset. And that has turned out to be an incredibly powerful move for our district. Since its onset, I've been the co-chair. At the time I started, I was the principal of Wakefield High School, and I was co-chairing with Deb Calora, the principal of the Greenwood School. She and I have continued to co-chair the committee, and this year I've brought Doug Lyons on as tri-chair. And this year's committee is Stacy McGrath from the Walton School, Tiffany DeBaradinas from the Greenwood School, Jen Gallant from Dahlberg, Ann Zernicki from Woodville, Erin Roy, Bev Elswitz, and Andrew Tetrault from the Galvin Middle School, Jill Chari, Rick McKenna, Will Cavanaros, and TJ Liberty from Wakefield Memorial High School. So that's the current committee. So each step of the way, we've been really looking at the educator evaluation system, the new regulations, and how we can really make it meaningful for us in the Wakefield Public Schools. And this last one was really a difficult challenge, and so we really started thinking creatively about how to use student assessment data to assess educator impact on student growth. And what we ended up really coming out with this is this idea about focusing on not just quantitative data, but also qualitative data, so that we're not just narrowly focusing on what the regulations say about using 2 test scores over 2 years. Because I think our conversation's been, teachers are more than just test givers, kids are more than just test takers. There's a lot more that goes on that's really powerful in the classroom in terms of student growth and learning. So what we did is we broadened the scope to 5 indicators with performance level descriptors. And so our performance indicators are, the first one is how students share their work and make their work public. The second one is how students use dialogue to demonstrate their understanding. The third is how students assess their own progress through individual and collective inquiry. The fourth one is the quantitative one, which meets state regulation around students demonstrating their learning through performance on growth and achievement measures. And then the fifth and final one, which is the one I'm most excited about, is how students demonstrate academic behaviors. And in that, things like growth mindset, perseverance, learning as a process over time, self-efficacy, application, creativity, and innovation. And what we really talked about, and I really think about just a great teacher like Erin Roy, who's an 8th grade math teacher in Wakefield, and she said, in my classroom, my kids are learning and growing every day, and 2 test scores may or may not capture that growth in the way, I don't think it's reflective of everything as I do as a teacher. As a teacher, I create a safe environment where kids can feel willing to take risks. I'm teaching kids how to be confident and to persevere in their learning, and all of those are factors that will lead to growth, whether it's today or tomorrow or the next day. Those are life skills. Those are college skills. Those are career skills. Those are skills that go beyond. So we ended up really taking those ideas and developing a full rubric based on those 5 indicators. So I went in yesterday and presented it to the commissioner and to a group of superintendents, and they were duly impressed, I would have to say. They were really excited about the work. I'll just pass along that Dr. Mitchell Chester, throughout the meeting was about 2 hours long. I did my presentation in like the first 40 minutes, but he kept coming back to, Wakefield has really stretched my thinking on this issue. He came back and said, I'm just feeling so optimistic when I see innovation like what Wakefield's doing. So I think you all know how incredibly proud I am of the Wakefield Public Schools. So I was really beaming in that. And I just think that the school committee should know the work that your teachers and administrators are doing beyond just what we need to do in our district. But, there's no question in my mind that we are becoming a model in this area will be a model for the state. Mr. Lyons keeps telling me I'm going to be on the worldwide tour, and I have a feeling that is going to be true, sharing this model. It's still in draft form, and we still have a ways to go, but it's pretty exciting, and I've been sort of promising that I would share this with you, but that's what happened yesterday, and it was a pretty great day for the Wakefield Public Schools. So just want to share that with you. Any thoughts or questions before I move on?
Well, first, congratulations. I think that's really in order because, I'm sure my colleagues would agree that this is among the most important things that we do as a system is evaluate our educators and give them the feedback they need to be better at their job, and helping our students grow. And I would just, when you're ready, I think that would be a wonderful presentation for this committee and a full conversation, and especially as we're going into a budget season where we're going to be talking about educator compensation, and I think part of the confidence that we have to convey to the community is that when we think about compensating our teachers and attracting and retaining the educator workforce that we need, that at the same time that we're evaluating them in a meaningful, constructive way that shows that the return on investment that we're making in them. So I think all of that's really important. So.
Great point. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Anything else? I think I have one more little piece here. I just also wanted to let people know that as we put the Wakefield Public Schools on the map, it's always good to be out there. The other thing I just included in the packet is that I'm also speaking on a panel with the commissioner this week on Friday at the Seaport World Trade Center in Boston. This is the Massachusetts Music Educators Association Conference, and as a former music educator, they've asked me to speak on this panel with Commissioner Chester and the president of the National Association for Music Education. So it's the three of us, and we'll be talking to administrators across the state about again, it's about educator evaluation and how music educators kind of live in that space and are supported and evaluated in the work. And so it's exciting. Anytime I can represent the Wakefield Public Schools, I'm very, very happy to do it. So I'm also looking forward to that opportunity. So thank you.
Is our director attending?
So I'm sure Tom Bankert will be in the audience, supporting me and cheering me on. And I believe Anna Morella's going, and probably several other music educators.
Great.
So I'm sure they'll be in the audience.
Just related, just a point, I think, reinforcing the importance of this, your conversations with music educators, right? Because when we think about narrow measures of teacher impact on student performance, we think about test scores in English and math, right?
Right.
But you're reminding us how important it is to do thorough, constructive, meaningful evaluations for teachers in all disciplines,
Right.
including music and all the arts and humanities, yeah.
Right. And one of the pieces that I'll be talking about is how, in the observation feedback process, it can be really tricky if it's not your content area, if you're a principal of a school or an evaluator of a music educator and you're not really as familiar with the content and how you can make that self-directed growth plan come alive for a music educator, and some kind of key questions to ask, and how you can support those teachers in their growth and their discipline, and how you can find those data points in educator evaluation. So I think I can be really helpful.
Excellent.
Great. Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to actually add on 2 comments to Mr. Liakos's remarks. First, I certainly echo everything that he said, with not only how exciting it is to hear how proud you are of Wakefield, but you should also know how proud Wakefield is of you. That this type of work is exactly what you have been doing for so many years, even in your role at the high school, never mind in the assistant superintendency, that brought rise to us in a very groundbreaking way, being one of the first to do the teacher evaluation system model, even though we crafted our own. But we crafted our own, as you know, in partnership with the teachers and the union.
That's right.
So that made it unique as well. It wasn't something that was done to them, it was done with them. So that
Which is why it's been successful.
Yeah, indeed. So that's something that we want to say thank you to you and for all of your leadership. You continue to provide leadership not only at Wakefield but around the state. to add on to Mr. Liakos's point about the work and how the criticalness of providing evaluation and feedback, I would add to that how also important it is to provide the necessary resources to allow the teachers and allow the faculty and staff to perform the tasks. And as we raise the bar, we want to be able to raise the bar on expectation. We want to raise the bar on performance. But there's also an element of resourcefulness there, which also is the committee and the community's obligation. And lastly, I'd just like to say, in a tongue-in-cheek, we don't want to have you have too much exposure to Commissioner Mitchell. And we don't want to have Commissioner Mitchell find so much enthusiasm with another Wakefield superintendent.
Yeah, good point.
So here's the thing.
Hands off, Commissioner.
So here's the thing. I've stated it clearly, and I'll continue to state it. I belong to the Wakefield Public Schools. That is where I belong, and that is where I'm fully committed, and nobody can tear me away.
Amen.
Great. Anything else? Dr. Smith?
Nope, that's it.
Great. Business reports.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The reports, I feel like we're pretty much going over the same story every month, which is this year not a bad thing. A couple of areas that I'm keeping an eye on. Substitutes have dipped about 20,000 from last month to this month. But looking at what's still remaining in the balance in that account, with 4 months remaining, March, April, May, and June, a $20,000 dip on a $100,000 balance, to me, isn't bad, although we do get into a little bit more substitute money as the year goes on. So that's a concern, but it's not something that I'm putting up the red flag over. Instructional supply line number 16, you'll see that has gone into the positive, and that's because we did execute the lease on the technology and have received the check back from the leasing company to cover what we had already expended. And finally, heating fuel continues to be our savior this year. Thank the Mother Nature for the warm weather we've had. And the only other two things that I don't include in this report, and I just want to keep in everybody's mind, is that this doesn't include this $91,000 positive balance right now. We know there's still expenses coming, but it also doesn't include money that's coming back from Reading for the Post Academy that we've expended or encumbered. And it doesn't include some money coming back from the Wakefield Academy to cover utility costs also. So I just wanted to just put both of those out there and let everybody know that those two things are not in there. And that, between those two things, should be probably around $150,000 to $200,000. So that's the positive. So those are good. That's good news on the budget, bottom line budget. So I feel comfortable there. Nothing great to report on the grants. Nothing good, nothing bad. Just kind of the same. And then on the revolving accounts, it looks like we made some huge deposits on the school lunch accounts. That really took a turn to the almost a positive now. Rolling into the last 4 months of the year, that should really just continue to get back to its balance forward account at the beginning of the year of 107,000. So we should be good, if not a little bit on the more positive side from that. Athletics did have another dip this month. I think they encumbered some additional things that are going to be needed for the spring sports season. Although that hasn't officially started yet, we're just wrapping up the winter season. We have also not collected any fees for the spring sports season, so that negative amount there should balance off and take care of itself in speaking with Mr. Kent. Preschool tuition, again, trending in the right direction. We have all of the salaries encumbered, and as long as we continue to stay on top of tuitions, we should be right on mark for that one. And that's basically all I have on the financial statements for the revolving.
Does anyone have any questions?
Could you just talk about the building rental line a little bit?
Yep, certainly. We have some checks that are due us, and I don't want to name anybody, but and it's not their fault; it's more our fault. We haven't. We're a little bit behind in the building. The buildings have now gone out, but we haven't received the payments in yet. But there are some large annual renters of our facilities who, through our fault, we haven't invoiced them. Now we've invoiced them, have not sent in their money yet. So there is some money to be collected there.
So you think by next month that should flip to at least an even?
I think it will be in a much different position than where it is right now. I'm not sure that it's going to flip fully over yet. We do have some other commitments for this year that are going to come in that we're anticipating. So we'll be at a positive by the end of the year, but I don't think it will be in a positive by the end of the month of March.
Thank you.
Did I answer that enough? I mean, I don't.
And then you were also having some collection difficulties with some tuitions, right? Is that any
We
better?
continue to make phone calls, yep. We haven't gone to the next step yet, but we continue to make phone calls. I remind families that we have made financial obligations based on their enrollments or whatever else, and most of the families are working well with us. It's just we're working with the families and continue to do so.
Okay. Thank you.
Does anyone else have questions? Okay. Gifts.
We have a couple of gifts tonight. The first one is in the amount of $500 from the Wakefield Girls Basketball Boosters Club to fund an assistant coach for the girls basketball team.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Mr. Markham? You in favor?
Oh, yes.
Voted unanimously.
Yes.
The next gift is we have a $1,250 gift from the Wakefield Girls Basketball Booster Club to fund an assistant coach to the high school girls basketball team.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Voted unanimously.
And third and finally, we do have a gift from the in the amount of $1,800 from the Friends of Wakefield High School Basketball Boosters Club to fund 2 coaches for the one for the varsity and one for the junior varsity boys teams.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor? Voted unanimously. Thank you. Great. Anything else under business reports?
No, I'm waiting for the budget questions.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
May I ask a question before we leave the
Yes.
administrators' reports?
Yes.
Getting back to the superintendent's report under Walton's site analysis.
Yes.
I know that Dr. Smith made reference to that during the public hearing.
Yes.
So it's probably unnecessary to repeat it. But if I may, if we're going to take this up at a future meeting,
Yeah.
perhaps the next meeting, I'd like to perhaps suggest that the administration reach out to the DPW director and maybe even our town council to draft the language for such a motion. Because if we're going to take it up at the next meeting, we don't want to have a delay in voting on a concept and then actually have to vote on particular language.
Okay.
So if there's an acceptable language, if you have a consensus that we want to bring this forward, maybe have some language that actually has already passed muster, might be a time saver.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay. Subcommittee reports, budget. Mr. Callahan.
Well, as you can see by all the preparation of the budget and all the minutes you just accepted, we've been busy. We do have a meeting scheduled for this Thursday that I'm not sure we need to have. At our last meeting, Mr. Piffling was afraid we weren't going to get to a couple items, but I believe we did get to them. So I proposing that we forego our Thursday morning meeting. Is there any
Is that okay with you
pressing
guys?
issue on that?
At least pretend.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation. Thank you.
Yes.
And then I have to figure when the next one after that is.
Well,
We
it's,
still have
you
to-
should know, Mr. Callahan, it's
Yeah.
on March 17th.
Oh. Well,
St. Patrick's Day.
Have fun. I will be here.
We have a policy on that.
All right.
I'll be on an airplane, so.
Communications, Mr. Kenny.
So we had a meeting scheduled, and then I didn't post it. So
All right.
I suppose we should reschedule.
Great. Labor, Mr. Markham, anything for now?
We remain in the thick of negotiations. We've engaged all bargaining units at this point, and we're making good progress.
Great, thank you. Mr. Tiro?
We have a meeting on the 22nd, and I will remember to post it.
Great.
Like the football.
Thank you. Future dates and agenda items, our next meeting will be on the 22nd.
And then
Mr. Callahan,
Just
yeah.
back to what Chairman Morgan had alluded to earlier, the Permanent Building Committee met last Thursday evening in regards to the statement of interest schedule and progress for the high school project. And it came up that the MSBA has very specific language that for us to adopt our support for that statement of interest. And although we already had a vote in support of that statement, it didn't contain the exact right language. So at our next meeting, we're going to be asked to have that piece taken out and revote that, just because of not that we changed our mind on whether we support it or not, it's just we need every specific word to be in the transcript.
That'll be next meeting?
Next
meeting, okay.
Yep. It just seemed like once Thursday night came out, that I realized that the packet was already done for tonight to get that language into today, and it was by the end of the month, it was going to be acceptable.
Thank you. School committee comments. Mr. Kenny.
I will not give a big, long spiel tonight, but most of all of you probably know by now that I announced today that I'm not seeking re-election. To put it in a nutshell, I've really enjoyed this work. I would love to continue for 3 years and then 3 years after that. And I've been on the fence for the past, however many months. Going from, at one point saying I'm almost sure I'm going to run to, the decision that I ended up making. And the reality is, if I'm on the fence like that and I'm not sure if I have the time to do this job right, I felt like I would be doing a disservice to all of you and to the community and to the schools if I tried to pretend that I had the time to really give it my all on this job. So I think a lot of you folks, we all spend a lot of time doing this job, and it's often a lot more than anyone expects. I can say with certainty, though, whether we're in agreement, in times of disagreement, whatever it is, this is a fantastic school committee. And there are a lot of hectic school committees across the state. You'll read about them in the paper. You probably heard about them. Some of them are complete circuses. This one is always professional, always thoughtful, and always deliberative. So I will miss it, but that's all I'll say for tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Tiro?
Well, I'll express my thanks to Mr. Kenny for his term of service on the school committee. I am sure that it was not an easy decision, but I do wish you all the best in your future endeavors. And on a more serious note, I'd like to express my condolences to a Wakefield family who lost somebody far too soon recently. Ashley Fletcher, I went to middle school with Ashley. She died earlier this month. I remember her smiling. I suspect most people will remember her smiling, and I'm praying for her family.
Thank you. Mr. Callanan?
I think I'm good.
Mr. Markham?
I'm good as well.
Mr. Liakos? Great. I am good, too. Next up, we have a motion to enter into an executive session.
Move that the school committee enter into executive session to receive a report on negotiations from the Labor Relations Subcommittee and to discuss negotiation strategy concerning all school department bargaining units.
Second.
You may want to add on if we're going to return to open session or not.
To return to open session at the conclusion of the executive session.
For the purpose of adjourning only?
Just for adjourning only, is my point.
Yeah.
Well, no, yeah.
So moved.
Just a roll call.
Oh.
Yes.
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 Mr. Liakos? Mr. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Tiro?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. We're done here.